Joni's back, everybody. We have longest long run powered by Nike Running this weekend, and we've got some Blackbird donuts for everybody after the run, but you got to earn them first. So we thought we'd talk again with Joni about everything up to mile 20, maybe go through Boston College. So welcome back, Joni.
I'm only going to talk if you send me a care package of is it Blackbird donuts?
Blackbird donuts. Have you had those?
Okay. No, but I'll give you my address offline.
We'll get you some Blackbird donuts on the house marathon weekend.
Remember, you are what you eat. Okay, keep going.
All right. So this weekend runners are attacking the longest long run. And they've also done at this point, a whole bunch of runs deep into Wellesley and back from mile 20, where we start our runs. I want to talk about Wellesley. There's notably the Scream Tunnel on race day. For me, I say racers, stick to your race plan, save the kissing for loved ones, maybe absorb the energy and keep going straight ahead. And Wellesley, for me, I'm wondering how you approach it, but the most critical part is that downhill out. It's a very tricky zone. I think it's Grossman's Hill. Could you tell us your experiences with that steep downhill?
Well, you can start to really smell the finish line as you go through the Scream Tunnel. And then we lived in the Wellesley area for a couple of years when my husband was in business school. So I ran that part of the course a fair amount. So I'm quite familiar with that segment. That being said, you do come down into the, really, I think it must be one of the lowest points on the course when you come. Also, Nike Wellesley used to be in Wellesley. So I always get very sentimental when I go by that. I don't even know what it is. Is it Marathon Sports now?
I think it is.
Yeah,
it might have been real
estate. It might have been a real estate office. It might be real estate. I can't remember. But anyway, we're all in the sport together, right? Yep. So then you come down the hill, and that's a chance to really collect yourself, to really shake it out, and just to take an assessment of how you're feeling, and maybe take some deep breaths. Namaste. You're not there yet, but you're getting there. And then you come up and out of the I don't want to call it a gully, but the low point, and
Lower Falls there. It's called Newton
Lower Falls. Yeah. Right. And then you're going over the overpass of 128. And that's when I want to take the exit and go back to Maine, but I don't. And then you go by Newton Wellesley Hospital, and you hope that you don't need any assistance there. And then there's the T station. So a lot of people come out via the T to cheer runners on, those spectators who are trying to hit numerous spots. And so there's a good crowd from, coming up out of the falls, and then really past Newton Wellesley Hospital and along that whole strip until the fire station.
Yeah.
So I think the best place to try to collect yourself and take that assessment is when you're at the bottom of the falls and before you start coming up. And that's when you sort of have to pull it all in and gather your thoughts and gather your physical abilities and mental toughness and move forward.
Yeah. So there's 4 hills. There's the coming up over the highway, then you take the turn at the firehouse. You've got the hill there, then you've got the next hill, the third hill at Newton City Hall, and then of course flattens out again, and then Heartbreak Hill, the infamous, famous, our favorite one. You've run this obviously as a former winner, as a international competitor, and you've also run it with your kids, as you mentioned, probably not with the goal of winning in that year. How was your approach different to the hills, as a competitor versus as a person just running the race? Was there a difference for you?
Well, I think the hills are overrated, first of all. And secondly, the first year I had no clue that I'd already reached the top of the last hill at BC, because I felt like the crowds were really leveling the topography. So I couldn't really see all the undulations in that segment of the course. So I just don't worry about the hills, just worry about you and how you're feeling, and know that there's a downhill on the other side of the hills, and that's really more concerning, because that's where people tend to tighten up, and it's not going uphill, it's coming down after contracting all those muscles and then trying to open your stride and extend your stride. And you know, if the weather's cold, that's I think a little more difficult to keep your muscles intact and firing.
Yeah. I have to, my experience mirrored exactly what you're talking about, where I was psyched up for the hills. I knew they were coming. I kind of slowed my pace a little bit to get through them and tried to get back in rhythm by the top. So I'd be clear in the flats. You do that. It's a lot of mental energy. But then when I hit Boston College coming down, my alma mater, I was hoping to be excited there, but I was in the worst pain of the race coming down from Heartbreak Hill by a lot. That was the hardest part for me. So that's,
I think the hills are overrated and the downhills are underrated.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. I had a conversation with a guy he's from Ohio, and he was obsessively mapping the area and found a hill like that, like Heartbreak, at his home, and told me he was running it and it didn't feel that bad. And I said, well, that's because it's really not that bad. Just because something's talked about a lot doesn't necessarily mean it lives up to the hype. It's usually the opposite. It made me think of the Alamo and what everybody says about the Alamo, how it's kind of disappointing and not that big a deal. But people still talk about
Remember that, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Exactly. And they say runners come back to life in Cleveland Circle. Has that been your experience after the downhill pain? Do you feel slightly, maybe rejuvenated? Probably a little, not the right word exactly, but maybe back in rhythm by then?
Yes, I think once you come out of Cleveland Circle and past the railroad or the T tracks and start down Brookline Ave, that's where you really need to focus. That's when you're really beginning to feel tired, but there are good crowds along that section of the course too. So they'll keep you going, because if you think you're going to drop off, they'll say something that keeps you going.
And that's that. We'll say, Joni, thanks for getting us through Cleveland Circle, and the rest is up to the runners and the crowds that day.
Great. Good luck.
Thanks, Joni. Appreciate your time. We'll see you soon.
You too.